Peace, Super Heru Radio family. Family to the planet Earth. You're now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio. I'm your host up here, the Duke of Tears, along with my co-host, Selena, the Empress of 10,000 Years or More, Saga Shard, Super General Super Heru family. And hopefully everybody is okay that's in New York with a Frankenstorm, which turns out, they're saying now, is basically a repeat pseudo-storm that they had predicted sometime in 96 along the lines of a fake storm. So, I'm not going to get into the whole, whether or not it's real, all of that. It's like, at this point in the game, you already know what's going on. For those people that's actually going through it right now, we definitely want to wish you dry bones, you know what I'm saying? And hopefully you don't get flooded out too much, you know what I mean, and dealing with these sudden changes that's coming through. It passed through down here. The water levels was pretty high, but it still was A-okay, you know what I mean, in terms of us, in terms of our experience in it. And it was pretty nice today, so I can't complain. Also, thanks and praise to the ancestral energy and spirits that always tend to come in from the bottom and come through in times like this in great, what they call perfect storms. There's also a link to perfect storms like this in earthquakes or what do you call mudslides, avalanches and stuff. So you want to definitely do the knowledge to see what happens, you know what I mean, after this now. Something else going on. In terms of some of the things that get swept under the rug in situations like this, one of the things that they had to bring attention away from is the attack of Israel in the Sudan, specifically on the border of northern and southern Sudan, because remember, George Clooney and the rest of them helped work that place over to the point where they don't broke it up and split it down the middle into two countries. And we know that the preponderance of the adversary is to always split things within a northern and southern district. So being that Israel attacked them, that basically was an affront to Egypt, who has deals with Israel and Sudan. I would say the people who are funneling the money and the oil money and drug money and stuff in those countries are now working in tandem. So this don't look good. So like I said before, as much as they're talking about the Iran occupation and all this other stuff, they may want to back up off that, just based on the fact that astrologically right now, Iran is in a what they call prestigious point of view or prestigious positioning. So they are at the precipice of something very, very big. So those people that's doing that, especially in the Scorpion period right now of death and renewal, may actually be lying in their own coffin. You know what I'm saying? But again, any adversary that's fallen in that context is actually better for us. I mean, so again, as the universal observers, we are the ones who basically come from that side of the world and focus on some of the things that's happening here that affect us. And specifically, like I said, in our community, we're definitely going through a Scorpio or Scorpion renewal phase season, just from where we were last year to now. You know, things that were preoccupied, or we were preoccupied with back then, you know what I'm saying? And specifically come to a point where a lot of people are feeling fed up with the given situation. But I would go far as to say that this feeling of angst and fed upness, if that's a word, is also really coming from the fact that we are now at the, how many days before 0.721st? We're leading up to this point. So a lot of the built-in angst, a lot of the built-up speculation and stuff like that that's going on with it is basically raising everybody's, in a sense, attention or vibration to this aspect of union. So being that there is this great misperception and preconception of what's going to happen, up until it actually goes down, most of what we're talking about is either conjecture or prophecy. So we need to look at what's happening within us individually, you know what I mean, to identify what changes are happening externally in that way. And it's good, you know what I'm saying, in the sense that we are in a position to be able to rewrite our own understanding of ourselves, how we see fit. Yet before any nation comes together, there's always a civil war. You know what I'm saying? It happened in time immemorial in the old confederacies of the old dominions of America, or Amaruka, or West Africa, or whatever you are defining it as, or whatever you perceive it as, based upon your level of consciousness and specific black or ancestral consciousness that you are divining your cultural information to and from. So, like I said, we're at the stage now where most of the secrets, a lot of the secrets that were being put out or that were put out back in the days are starting to be ultimately revealed. And a lot of people who have been in position to hold these secrets all these years are going to be the ones held out to dry. And you start rolling up to them and asking them, well, if you knew about this, how come you didn't do this? How come you didn't do that? You know what I'm saying? Remember, everybody's a genius in hindsight, you know what I'm saying? So we all tend to know what's best after the situation go down. But it's what you do leading into the situation and during the situation that really postulates who you were in it. And right now, I see a lot of people trying to rewrite their own history that act like they wasn't involved with a lot of different controversies and stuff like that. Not just in our community, but just in general. Like the fact that the guy who acts as the president right now is the one that's killing mostly U.S. quote-unquote citizens, you know what I'm saying? Which, again, in a way is him doing the work that needs to be done in his view, you see what I'm saying? But, again, he's, ordering deaths for families, you know what I mean, shit like that. And it would be one thing if somehow or another that was benefiting us, but as it stands, I don't see that at all. What I do see is the yoke of control being more and more constricted. So in that, as they move closer to their sham election, a dude who was basically laughable in the beginning, they now try to hype up like he could actually get it. He could actually take it from his dude. Unseating an incumbent president is very, very historically limited. Not a lot of people are successful in doing it. Yet, as this is an election between the African Americans and the Mormons, right, we got to look at it symbolically as to what this is too. Because symbolically, this also reflects on what's happening within us in our own community. If these people are basically marionettes of our internal situations being played out externally in the world stage, then if you have somebody that's pseudo-African-American, a.k.a. the president, and then this other dude who's a quote-unquote Mormon, a.k.a. Freemason, a.k.a. Satanist, then you're dealing with something symbolic to where we are in terms of struggling or identifying or striving to identify or clarify what terms like Moor and black and, these terms mean. Now, there's a big conjecture now that, Moor is the same as nigger and things like that. And in some instances that is true. Yet, every instance is based upon what you are dealing with in the circumstance. So just because it means that in this circumstance or in this conversation don't mean it means that in this conversation that you're having with this person. How we talk amongst ourselves is different than how we talk when somebody that's not us come on the bus or the train or whatever around us. All black people know the voice that you put on when you're around them white people. And it's not because you're scared or something like that. Sometimes it's to protect them from their own racism. They've externalized their racist behavior to such a degree that we, someone who's not them, will sometimes take some of the emotion or the bass out of our voices to talk to them in a manner that makes them feel comfortable. And not always because we're scared of them or we want to be down with them or whatever, but really just to chill them the F out so that way they don't wild out or try to play us on some crazy race shit because that's what they live in. So when I say that the Daughters of the American Revolution, in a sense, was the consolidated basis of the turning point in which the Caucasian woman was going from a symbol of universal slavery or opulence by control to a symbol of freedom, being put forth in the French image of the Statue of Liberty based on the original Moorish or black Statue of Liberty in Africa, as well as the yes. Till 10, and you go in the bag.
Why does it play my computer every time when I go to bed?
You're lucky tonight. So you got until 10 o'clock. So it becomes a critical point of understanding where you fit into it. Where you fit into the entire enterprise, where we all fit into that. I'm sorry. I'm dealing with you. Hold on. So as we are going through this whole circumstance of, okay, well, I'm this or I'm that, or this word is older than this, or this term is older than that, whatever. You know what I'm saying? All of these terms, whatever they mean. You know what I mean? That basically is being played out in the so-called election for the presidency in the symbolic aspect of an African American and a woman going at it for seat of a agency that we created to protect us from people like them. See, the problem is, if everything go back to the establishment of the original Republican form of government, then that means that a lot of people right now in power, both in our community, both in state and federal community, would be jobless, would be going to jail, would be being tried for treason. You know what I'm saying? Would be excommunicated nationalistically and become stateless persons the same way that they've done to us. So when they talk about the redistribution of wealth, they're not talking about making everybody equal in terms of money. They're talking about making everybody poor. That's why the middle class has to be phased out, because that is the block, let's say, between the haves and the have-nots. That's the hope that exists, or that this dude was basically pumping into the masses when he was trying to become president. So the hope, like I said, that was put forth by people like Moorally and them back in the days as an example, is now being tread upon and being put in a negative context as if the prophet was to come out, and because he said what he said, that somehow we are construing it now that the term Moor is or somehow an emancipation of something else, when all names in such a circumstances like that come from something else. The only reason why we was up on Northampton in 2003, 2004. Queen Alpha said she even researched it earlier than that. But the reason why it's not popping or wasn't a popular term during the time up until now, other than from me or her, the reason why it wasn't prevalent was because most of the paperwork, or more paperwork that was abound and going around at that period, was Patriot influence, based upon the Patriot influence being infused into the Moorish movement in 1981. The beginning of it in 1979, but around 1981 to about 1995, which then by 1997 created the overall quote-unquote Illuminati culture that then was used to piggyback what would become the Tea Party and the militia movement and the Waco and all the other shit. It's no coincidence that the year after, 1957, when the UCC comes online, is the year after the last consul of the United States around the world was formally and finally closed by the federal government relinquishing the jurisdiction. This also freed the federal government up to a circumstance to then receive foreign patronage. You see, so in the same manner, it's this whole wave of further denationalization through commerce. Remember, the basis of the old, or what became the basis of the old economy around the world was slavery. So as that became the dominant faction or mode of exchange, white women specifically were passed around and sold from harem to harem to, again, do things like bleaching out. So if a family the Franciscan family wanted to start to bleach itself out, the first stance would be to get a courtesan or somebody that was in a lower circumstance coming up from the slaves, because then they would be more apt to perform, and in the process of blending, as they say, in peerage, you eventually start to bleach out the line. But this was vogue. This is why they was wearing all the powder and stuff on their faces and all of that, because, again, they were trying to create an aspect of themselves based upon this ancient custom that actually came and was a byproduct of what we know as the Yakubian experiment. So the Moors decided that, the traditional Moors decided that they needed to go up in Grenada and create their version of that in what would have become the Sicilian or the dark Italian or the Mediterranean, quote-unquote, modern Mediterranean man. By going up there and seizing all of those white women, again, as commodities, as slaves, as money, and then raising them up in nobility by bringing up the culture and all of that, as well as bringing Moorish women and nobility. I mean, it was predominantly, Moorish in terms of culture, but just like any culture, you had a different caste. And those at the bottom at that time happened to be also used as commodities or as money, currency, to be traded to different types of Moors around the planet. So as that system began to decay, as all systems like that will do, the spoils were then taken by those who were at the time meek, and that was them, meaning the adversary. And he then used the Caucasian woman and his right to have a God in his own image to then unify his people and take what he learned in terms of the techno-sorcery and the trick knowledge and all that as a means to perpetually keep everybody down through oaths. So we hear about the Illuminati, we hear about and I don't even like using that word, but that was a specific order at one time that was very small. It was only like maybe 2 or 3 of them, really, and that's counting White House. When they first started, just like the United States, it was basically nothing. It was just somewhere where people was at that had its ancestral beginnings somewhere else and was then transplanted due to the expansion of the British East India Company. That was now expanding itself even more in the manner of what was called the Crown, which would then become the banking and robber barons that we know of today. So all of this is justified to come out of the decaying of the empire that you left behind, based upon forced exile. You know what I'm saying? Yet you were first exiled to your own children, by your own children, who today would be the people they call Hispanic, from the darkest, let's say Dominican to the darkest, the name Mexican and whatever, those type of people. And because they are seen now as the new, and the mestizo type or Castilian Aragonese type of Morisco is seen as the dominant Spanish. That's why you'll see more people like Salma Hayek, that type of Spanish, Zia Rivera, those type of Spanish people, Eva Longoria, those white type Spanish people are the ones that they want you to perceive as the dominant aspect. So when you think of Spanish, you think of them. You know what I mean? Alex Rodriguez. So you can see these people and see them as melanated, but not see them for what they really are, as being, Morisco stock or Moorish, even in identification. So in the unification of this idea of what we are or what we perceive ourselves to be is predicated upon what we individually understand these terms and these meanings to be. And that can only come from the experience of walking around being recognized or hoping to be recognized as that, and to test the response as it is you are. Unfortunately, we don't have a necessary cohesive enough unit. And as great as the temples and stuff are, if they are being run like churches or being run like 501c3, same way that Masonic temples or whatever are being run the same way, then that is not really helping us. That is actually counter-revolutionary. To our ultimate goal, right? It's more revolutionary to not participate, to exercise your right of indifference, to sometimes not participate in conflicts and struggles, just as it is to do so. That's how a lot or certain empires or aspects of the dynasty were able to stay in power so long until the end. So, like I said, as it's being played out in the mainstream, it's being played out in the mainstream with us. What we're going to decide, and whoever or whatever we decide to be recognized as is what it's going to be. So, they freaked it on you by making it so that way, if you look at it from a more Moorish perspective, that's more identifying with Romney, who is a Republican, who is red, who is using the term more, right? Even as much as they downplaying it right now, as soon as he get in, they're going to come out with how many wives and all that other shit he done had and all of that. But you got that, right? Then you got the African-American side, you see, which is then the denationalized and declassified Negro, black, and colored, you know what I'm saying, that exists within the wilderness of North Central South America. So you see what I'm saying? Either way you pick, it's a wash. It's not really been a benefit, and it's not supposed to. But it is, like I said, a symbolic representation of where we are in terms of the confluence of energies and information and reconciling of a lot of ancestral beat that has yet to fully be realized by us in the present context. Due to the fact that most of our ancestors in these wars that have happened, from the Civil War of 1812 to the Spanish War and all of that, none of that was ever avenged. All of those people who lost their land and from freehold and went into, copyhold and all of that, those people were never really recognized for what really happened. No one has ever really paid for the specific historical confusion that has left us all at each other's throats, specifically us as the first one, because we're the most denationalized. And everybody since that denationalization, including us, have been feeding on that, whether we realize it or not. The fall of every empire begins at the beginning of it. So if there were only two world empires in terms of the order of Christ and the order of Islam, when I say the order of Islam, I'm not just talking about the Sunni Muslims in Arabia. I'm talking about the people who live in the culture of houseofel and master. That's all the people in Southeast Asia, Hindu Kush, all of that. All of that was Islam. The Mughal dynasty, all of that is Islam. Genghis Khan and all of them, Tiladan, all of those were a conglomeration of tribes, some of which were bound together through the fact that they were transported from one part of the planet to the other. So you would have a group of wild Neanderthal Caucasians, let's say freshly grafted from this side of the world, put on a boat by the Phoenicians or Canaanites and then brought up into the wilds of Eurasia and then concentrated in the place we call the Caucasus. And then moved from there, marched 2,200 miles across the hot Arabian Desert into the caves of West Asia. And then what? They go into the caves and then just live there. What's happening while they're there? What modern history says is while these people were in the caves, there was no civilization going. So they're trying to say, again, that there are different epochs in time in which basically when they were asleep, they basically want to act like there was nothing else going on. Like it was like them and the dinosaurs, and then eventually they evolved, and then somehow or another they got rid of the humans before them. So when we talk about a human race, we're not talking about what we perceive in the present context. What we know the human race, original human race, to be is original man, original woman, original child. Right? Yet, that is our entrance into the story. That's the archetype we play in it. So, based upon the fact that most of our history is put in the mythic context, we don't fully perceive what we want ourselves to, in a sense, be realized as, meaning that we don't really understand or we don't know how to put into context when or how some of these events came together to then provide the proper backdrop for what to do now. So finally, you declare nationality. You put yourself out there in terms of putting everybody on notice that you need to, that you've done this. Now, what do you have in terms of a government structure that is going to reflect that? Because the United States can only deal with nations in a government-to-government basis. So, depending upon the charter, right, if we're going from the original charter that the Prophet laid out, then that in itself was sublime. There was nothing really that we needed to really add to that to really flip it, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? And then what CMB did to add in the little extras that made it, so cooperative that we can now refer to it now as a precept as to why we can claim what we claim, then why is it that we are still being harassed and put in the negative context? So, in my view, it's because we don't have a consolidated constituency that can represent us, that is accepted universally enough that a cohesive basis can be substantiated, that everyone can basically refer their legal circumstance to. If all the black people in America were using Moors as their so-called legal correspondent, America in itself would almost switch within a day, especially if these Moors were versed and conscious into what it is they were doing in terms of tactically, in terms of the interface, to get what you want with the honey instead of the vinegar. Going in under the laws or precepts or maxims of laws of natural equity that promotes the idea that it looks at that which is done, which should have been done, as done. Again, the maxim of natural equity says one looks at that which should have been done as done. Therefore, when you put something out there in good faith, in 100% cotton paper legal note, it is their responsibility to deliver it in its proper circumstance, regardless to what specific idea they have about it. They have no legal determination or legal standing. As the good Dr. Bay said, sometimes it's better to challenge the legal standing of what they're doing than a jurisdiction, because jurisdiction is like the hot hand, where standing is something more intellectual that they have to abridge it somehow, and because they can't, it's more likely for you to at least get an adjournment where they keep adjourning and eventually you stop getting them in the mail, of which then you send them a follow-up letter to let them know that they have now fallen into fault in terms of their obligation of reconciling your claim, of which they should be in receipt of. So, like I said, all of this is predicated upon what we idea and understand ourselves to be. We know we're all Moors, just like we know we're all melanated. There was never any Moors on Black Planet when it first came out. I remember when Facebook came out, there was hardly no Moors on it. Now everybody, people you never think, so claiming Bays and L's and all of that. Who do you think they're getting all that from? From us. I'm watching people backpedal and talk it crazy, like, oh, well, that's why, I'm not really messing with certain people now. I'm like, oh, word? Like, but you was just rocking a jersey. Like, okay, well, this is what I mean. Alliances change when people see the futility of one's own destruction. People begin to see and peer through the veil and start to see Aset instead of ISIS. And I don't mean that in any double entendre way about anybody, organization, anything like that. I'm talking about actual ritual of ISIS versus Aset. So we're talking about a spiritual upheaval. So when did it happen? How did we get involved with it? When did it go down? What is some of the dots? Where's it coming in? Well, there were significant events of which we've been talking about on the Super Heru Radio for years. We've been saying on Super Heru Radio for years that the way people are doing and what people are filing and things like that is not reflective of what's really supposed to be going on and all of that. I'm glad now that it's become, in vogue and popular and people starting to see. But it's the same thing that was being said then that we're saying now. Only thing now is being more put out there because more and more people are being burnt by the situation. And unfortunately, it takes that sometimes, that scorching sometimes for people to see the light or the healing of the bruise. You know what I'm saying? Over there. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's become a physical, draining union or lack thereof of people trying to understand or misunderstand what's going on. And that's because they bred American people not to ask the pertinent questions. How is it, in my understanding, now, in reading certain texts and books and just putting together things analytically in my mind, they entered into this Civil War thing late. And really, they really had no ability or business to declare independence because they had just reached the level of schooling themselves. They was all esquires. Why would somebody who grew up under the same system and benefit from it, from that caste, use the same means then to destroy it unless they were involved with something else? So what most people fail to realize is that there's two sides to this so-called government. Not only, there's actually four sides, a public-private side on both, or let's say, a public-private side on both, and then an esoteric and an exoteric side on both. So there was a Moor named John Hanson, and in 1782, I got it.
I don't want to put on my
You're going to bed right after your granola bar.
So there was a president named John Hanson, and he was a Moor. Some people believe that he was Caucasian because there were Caucasian versions of him in terms of the statue. I've seen the pictures, the three images, one of the black man, the other of the white man, and then the other of the pseudo mulatto gentleman. Either way, whatever you want to say, there was a being named John Hanson. And in my understanding and my research of his family and all of that, they were Swedish royalty and all of that. And Swedish royalty and all of that. And they became very prominent over here. Just as I said, a lot of the Franciscan Moors, those Moors that were breaking away from the old republic, those old dynastic families that had been, again, expelled from 1492 because it spread. It didn't just stop there. It didn't just stop in Grenada. It's like all of the zones and places started to get rezoned and district. That's the word. And a lot of families just bounced. They wasn't with it. But towards the end, around 1782, there was a Masonic Congress that was held under the presidency of the Duke of Brunswick, who was put in position to stop the war, or the ancient war that was, again, festering between the ancients and the moderns, meaning the Moors from the order of Islam and the Moors from the order of Christ in all of their variations. And so because America, or Amaruka, or Western Africa, was seen as the land of the Nod, which is the land of the Node, or the North, Central, and South Node, was put in the proper context of a unified paradise based upon the 13 zones 48-state confederacy that came under varying names based upon what part of the confederacy you was at. So if you was in the Algonquin part of it, that's what it was to you. But it didn't mean that you were necessarily Algonquin. It would mean that you were of the Algonquin Confederacy, meaning that that was your government that was conspired of or congruent of all of the individual nations that were a part of the family of nations from time immemorial of Turtle Island, land of the frogs. So this Masonic Congress was attended by Masons from Europa, America, and Asia. You know what I'm saying? And it was held at a place called Wilhelmsbad. And so this pseudo-alliance between those beings who would be perceived as the Illuminati, it is said, came from this experience where they were formally integrated into based upon the fact that it came to the knowledge that they were trying to infiltrate all the lodges anyway. So they were given a certain time to rock. This is where it says in the Bible that the devil was given 1,000 years to rule. If you look from the time of, let's say, 1782, right, to 2012, you know what I mean? You add that up, you know what I mean? You get around that number. And so this pact basically joined together all of the solo societies in keeping the secret that this pseudo-Illuminati did exist and was basically trying to put itself in proper perspective. But at this time, what I believe was going on, too, was that just like we had the federal government putting up that was going to become the face of now the pyramid side of the government, which was us, was now going to be something else. This is when the switch came where they started to use the masonry now to veil all of the different levels as to what the pyramid really represented. To this day, white Grandmaster Masons don't know that they represent your government. Some do, but a lot don't. They are under the perception that it's Lucifer. They would rather these niggas believe that it is Lucifer that they get all of these signs from than you and your ancestors. People believe it was aliens that gave them this technology, demons. They would rather give the credit to anything but you. This is the hubris, the false pride, and Achilles that led to the shooting of his heel. So this pseudo-pact of these Moorish Masons, these Moors and these Moorish Masons, and then these Franciscan Moors, and then these amalgamated Masons, you see, became the glue that would be the underbelly of what was going to function as that. And so the Blue Lodges and these things would be used as a means to circulate the old aspects of the fraternity as it was now becoming into a modern, what they perceived as a modern age, an age that would be guided by the so-called light of illumination. But remember, the pseudo-Illuminati was again based on the older order that was created by other Moors who became Moriscos but practiced Moorish rites and whatever in secret and were known as the Alumbrados. After they were discovered, they were copied by Ignatius Loyola, who created the secret vows and the fourth vow and all of that for the Jesuits. A mestizo branch that was more fervent to the Caucasoid popes than the black ones, because the black ones were now being not recognized from Bavaria, because the citadel of Rome in Italy was going to be secured by the turn of the World War II for them. The same way Israel was set up for them. But all of that, again, was based upon what Noble Jew Ali had set out for and with the Moorish Science Temple. Technically, every Moorish Science Temple is supposed to run like the Vatican run now. Only thing, instead of the idols and all of that, it would be true spirituality, in which physical representations of beings in that way would not be worshipped, but would be seen as activation points for alchemical processes to go down based upon what it is you study. This is why there was a temple of Heru, there was a temple of Tahuti, there was a temple of that. So that way, when you were studying wisdom specifically, you could go there and just give wisdom and not have to worry about the knowledge creeping in and tainting your understanding of what it is you're trying to get wise on, or vice versa. So the spiritual implications of a resurrected, original, or organic government lay also in why it has yet to be manifested. This is the kingdom of Christ on earth that is talked about or depicted in the Bible that, again, some more see as a trick book. You know what I'm saying? So this so-called union, you know what I'm saying, was based upon the fact, again, because of John Hanson, it went down through him, I think, because his family had access and relations with the Barbary powers and was hooked up with some of the people who was smuggling and bringing a lot of the noble families out from under the yoke of the piracy that was going on between those Moors that was disgruntled from being expelled, as well as the breakdown or the infighting of the royal family of Europa that led to the amalgamation and eventually bleaching out of it. You know what I mean? It was actually maybe 5 John Hansons as well. One of them happened to be part of the Swedish court. You know what I mean? The Articles of Confederation, like I said, were aspects left over from the Iroquois Confederation or the Algonquin Confederation or the Moncton Confederation or the Alamatacanos Confederation, you know, or the West African Union, or how you look at it, or where you come from in the story. See what I'm saying? The Iroquois Confederacy was in existence when the branch of Caucasians that existed here wasn't even out the caves yet. You understand? That's why when you see the wild red man or the wild Indian, see what I'm saying, that's a throwback. That's the representation of those Caucasian people that when they ran off the plantation and learned the ways of what we taught them of the forest and all of that, they chose to live in the wilderness as that. The same way certain members of our high cultures decided one day just to walk out of the temples and forget it all. Eat a root, wake up, forget it all, be naked, start all over. That's how most of those Malaysian tribes and deep tribes that you find in South America got there. The more Indian ones were the ones, or the people who were created out of the amalgamation process of these people, and then again went into the forest and were homogenous amongst themselves. The white man led this as primitive. These primitive cultures, though, are studied by him in the esoteric manner, in the form of spiritual, ritual, and high magic, or ceremonial magic, which allegedly is the highest form of magic. That's why Native American magic is more guarded to them. They'd rather you know that they practice voodoo than Native American rites, because then that gets into aspects of the Scottish rites that they keep hidden from everybody else. Remember, the Scottish rite was done by Pike. Pike was just a brigadier captain in the Confederate Army of John Drew, who was Noble Drew Ali's pop, a full-blood Cherokee, based upon the intermittent conflict between the Cherokee Nation, who were fighting over slavery. Albert Pike was also a Jesuit. After he received his fourth vow Jesuit task, he hooked up with Thornton Jackson, and then that's when they flipped the rituals on the Prince Hall dude and the Scottish Rite dude, and started to create the semblance of the order that would be how you get the degrees. So that means then that Masonry in its modern context is also Jesuit influence, or is Jesuit based. You see what I'm saying? Which is why you'll go through something called the Order of the Cardinal, or which is why when you get to the highest point in the Scottish Rite, you then either gotta join the Church of Satan or the Catholic Church. Get consecrated as a bishop or a priest or something. So that way, when they try to bring the order of Memphis and Mizraim, the primitive order of Memphis and Mizraim to you, you are now fully, in a sense, prepared to now go through the degradation aspect of it, because all of this stuff is satanic stuff that was put on after to turn you into a post-human or a transhuman by making you defile yourself and defile others to a point that you degrade your soul to the aspect of total control, where you just break down and have seizures. You know what I'm saying? Or worse. You are not in your body at certain points in the day. You can't be out in the sunlight. Now, this doesn't mean that these people fully vamp out and become werewolves or whatever, but it does mean that if they believe that they have been damned to hell in such a way based upon their lifestyle and their culture, and there is no other government in the world that represents a light of the true and living God, or the true culture of man, which is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, then it's going to turn into the melee that you see now, in terms of all nations at each other's throats. That's what the Bible says. So as we approach the 0 point, you see more and more people jumping ship or changing sides, because this is the natural progression of the Masonic thing. This is why certain Masons get to a certain point, and then, like Elias Levy did all of this shit to denounce Christianity and all of this little shit with the occult and all that, and right before he died, he became a Christian again. That's part of the ritual. Then people's like, oh, he was full of shit, all of that. But, again, that's part of the ritual for him. When you live the life of, let's say, a Mason, you are living the life of someone who lives things by witnessing or observing things symbolically. When you're a Moor, you are living the things that you are observing symbolically. It's a very different, because one, there's no oath involved necessarily with a Moor unless you're going into something like the Moorish rite. And from my understanding, there's no talk of ripping your tongue out and cutting your head off and throwing you into the hot 7 seas and all that other crap in it. Anything that says that it'll kill you, you get down with it, is dope, because it's telling you it's going to happen to you if you do it, but it's also whack because it's something that's going to eventually try to corrupt your soul, which is the true currency in the esoteric realm. How much of your soul do you possess? Not how much of your soul have you sold. Because whatever you sell, you already got, but whatever you haven't sold is like money in the bank. So there's always a means for someone to want to flatter you and give you stuff to appease a certain aspect of yourself. But then you got to know spiritually what it is you deserve and what it is you don't. And part of our ancient government was a secured way where this was told to the people and to the children in a specific manner, in a specific round table, almost, let's say, quasi-structured group. You had it was very simple. You had the men's lodge, which was like 3 to 6, and then the above ages was like 30 to 33, 57 to 60, 84 to 87. Then you had the dog soldiers. These were the young cats, the ones that was under the totem of the wolf. These are the ones that's there under age 24 to 27, 51 to 54, 78 to 81, 100 to 508. Then there was the hunter-gatherers. These are the elders who understood the ways, or the grand shepherd, who understood the ways of consecrating and building the mounds and the lodges. These were the 75 to 78-year-olds, or the 120 to 105-year-olds. The council lodge was then, let's say, the Iroquois government itself, which then gave the individual prospects out that was then given out to the different regions through message carrier, through boat or whatever, and given back, and then everybody would agree. You would have to be either 18 to 21 years old, or either 45 to 48, 72 to 75, or 99 to 102. If you was in a women's lodge now, which was the opposite, on the opposite sphere, if you think about everything I'm talking about on a wheel, the men's lodge would be on the right side of the wheel, and the women's lodge would be directly across from it. That would be 15 to 18, 42 to 45, 69 to 72, and 96 to 99. Then you would have the singers and the mediums. This was the psychic aspect of everything, right? All the spiritualism, all the medium, all of the Rota tarot readings, all of the ghost dances, war dances, rain dances, all of the real historical aspects of the culture would come through the mix, the mediums and the singer, right? This was either 12 to 15, 39 to 42, 66 to 69, 93 to 96. The last two would be the War Chiefs Lodge, which was, they started you off, if you had a total for that, you would start off at 9, like the Gogi in the Zulu culture. I think there they start at 6, but here we started at 9. From 9 to 12, then from 36 to 39, then from 63 to 66, I believe. And then you had the Peace Chiefs, who were, again, started around 6 to 9, 33 to 36, the Christ age, 33, 60 to 63, and 87 to 90. So you see, there was a woven structure that we had in which you could go to the different aspects of, just like now, today. If you want to know what to do with your car, you go to the DMV. If you want to know what to do with your health, you go to the GMO. You know what I'm saying? We had the same thing back then. Because remember, everything that you see here is modeled off of what we already had popping. You got to get the whole concept of nothing being here, that this totally being just barren forest. And yet it was a huge tract of land like that. We kept it like that. But within those places were whole cities at some point. You know what I'm saying? Were whole empires, all up and down South America. 100 years, even before Abu Bakr and them came over here. So when you read about the Bible, they talk about the fall of the Amalekites in the land of Zahemia. And that there was another people called the Jaredites. These are the Mayans and the Olmecs, or the Tomoacan and the what became as the Mayans, who again, black people, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Who Mexican people have adopted through the aspect of the time that they were given Mexican culture under the rulership of the brutal Morisco Moors, who were in league with the Jesuits, who were striving to push the United States into war with the Confederacy. But in ancient times, when you read about it in the Bible, in my opinion, these two cultures represent each other. So due to the great benefactorial knowledge given by Mbay and Angelo Solomon, Sheikh Hus Mohammed, you know what I mean? All of these ancient or original cultural magicians who had the ability to inspire the original mind of the original man and woman to the point that they could create a structured organizations within the belly of the same country that is besieging them due to them being remnants or the only people who could put the quote-unquote United States government back in its original context. If you look at everything that the United States did in terms of civil rights, it was based upon something that black people initiated themselves, and which they, based upon their informants, and these people tried to push into a historical direction that they could then create a movie about to then market how it happened to the American populace. Yet, the American populace has to start to understand the difference between itself and the United States, and at the same time, the citizens of the United States have to understand who and why the hatred of these original people exists, because then maybe they would care more about the destruction and the killing of the national treasures that we represent and how it would be to put us back in the position for real. Yet we have to be in the context to do that. Creating not going to put us in the context to rule if we're not ready to do so. And we're not ready to do so because we haven't decided what context we want to put ourselves in. So when you read in the Bible about the capture, the neophyte capture of the city of Mulek, you read about these armies, the Teancums, the Lehis, and Moroni, the Moroni army. And Moroni was one of the great kings of the old Olmec or the Moroccan Empire that sat at the isthmus of Tehuantepec. Tehuantepec. Yeah. And so you're talking around like, yeah, talking about 300 BC, 2000 BC. You know what I mean? Of which then the Mayans inherited this culture from then 600 BC to 2000 AD. So what happened between the year 300 and 600? See? Well, when you read the Bible, it talks about the Lamanite prisoners that were marched to the bountiful army that existed at the coast. And when you look at the map or how they show you in the thing, it basically shows you one of the points. If you get the book Making It a White Man, there's a graph in there that shows the diagram of where it says the Yakub experiments went down. And this is one of the coasts where this thing happened. So what a lot of other cultures don't like is that part of our history is the beginnings of their cultures. You see? So if this is taught to our children in the proper context, then they believe that this will somehow breed some sort of militaristic attitude within us as a people against them to then create another age in which we put them, another 25,000 years in which we put them in bondage. Yet the punishment, according to the Prophet Destiny, Mbay, what he wrote, for them, in a sense, projecting the same negative energy they put on us, on them, is the fact that they will be forever wiped off the face of the planet in the context of a color or complexion. meaning that they will be bred in or bred out of almost every race on the planet, which is why they're so into depopulation and have been for so many years. And why they're so into the idea of you breeding into them and them raising you up culturally, when really they're just using the black mass or the dark matter or dark energy that they've harnessed it in the form of the child or the orphan in a ways to make them feel better about their own guilt, but also as a means to show what they're doing more for you than your people are. When was the last time you seen some event go down where black people are doing something for black people other than what happened with Haiti? You know, and maybe Katrina. But when was the last time you seen some major event like that where it was solely, you know, other than the BET Awards, you know what I mean? I'm not even talking about that in a negative context. I'm just saying for real, like other than one of the negative examples that we have out there, what do we really have that represents us as a government? We have things that represent us as a people. But all we have to represent us as a government is the government that our forefathers set up for us to be adjacent to, not to be a part of. Yet the more of us that became a part of it had to become a part of it in the systematic way that it was formed. So we had to come into it as aliens. See what I'm saying? As 3/5 of people, as aliens, as something not natural to the zone or jurisdiction of what the United States was, because we were the makers of it. So the apparent God is therefore has to be negated to the flesh in order for the creation to flourish and exist. Just like sometimes you may try to be creating something and somebody be standing around you waiting for you to do it. It's hard for you to do it. But like when you go to the bathroom, somebody's standing there, you can't really go. Again, because, you know, that's not natural for you. You got to do it in your own time. So the more we integrate into the system, we then start integrating into it through different circumstances, the different customary names that didn't reflect our original nationality prior to the annexation and the rising of the emancipated slave into the superior position of pseudo-master or steward, based upon the decline of the infrastructure of the original government represented by this pyramid that was now circumvented by this esoteric side of the order that existed. So by the time of the Civil War, most of the so-called black Masons like Thornton Jackson and these people had already been pledged to preserve the original secret as to why the country began to work or go towards the trend that it did. Ask yourself, how did the country go from a totally decimated Europe to, by 1955, everything being almost totally rebuilt and having a drastic technological jump where everybody is like talking about things in the future and all that? How did that just happen all of a sudden? Where did they get the tech to do that? One school of thought says that all of this mostly came from Nazi material and technology that was left over, that was broken, that they could keep, and that they would work to sophisticate and re-engineer into their own facilities and use the cover of alien and UFO abductions and things like that to moderate the public perception of that it was aliens rather than the same Nazis that they were working with and basically working and cooperating with up until World War II, based on all of the talks and things that went on at Montauk in Long Island. So if you notice, most of the beginnings and howlings of the things that happen in this country happen in woodland areas. Bohemian Grove, Camp David, Montauk Point. That's because you're dealing with people who are following Druidic rites and who are following ancient Amur, Indian native masonry, which Europeans then took over to Europe and modeled whole cities and things after, based upon the natural constructions that we made out of the land and the rock and the earth and mud and mound that already existed. this doesn't take away from anything that our brothers and sisters created and made over on the other side of the world, because we are them too. Yet somebody has to claim what our ancestors left for us. Yeah. The same way we're willing to claim it for what's over there, but it's like we're willing to claim what's in Africa more than the Africans are willing to claim for that. In a lot of cases, because they're getting money. Understand? They're just getting money off of what's going on, and that's all well and good. Let's just keep it real if that's what's going on, and then it's break bread with everybody else, because you have these laymen that's out here giving out false information that the Black Dragon Society is going to do this and do that, which at one time was true. Yet a lot of things change when pyramids start rising out the ground, and you know what I mean. Radioactive fallout start coming, and then superstorms start remanifesting. A lot of zones start being redone. Just as you had the United States of Barbary, you had the Idrisid imperial dynasty that had its noble beginnings in all of the nations that we now call Mauritania, Mali, Morocco, Sudan, Nubia, which they flooded, you know what I mean, which was the dynasty that was really dealing with a lot of the heavy, original, esoteric, Moorish, Malian, Dagon, which is Dogon, or Dagon, systems that was then working in conjunction with a lot of the rights and the situations that we had popping off over here. If you look at the dress of certain Cherokee nations, the Pigeon Nation, which is the Peri or the Blackfoot, and other nations like that, and some of the gear that you see, ceremonial gear that you see, with our brothers and sisters across the water, you see that. But what we're dealing with now is the evolution and the illumination of the consciousness that we have all accepted as, or need to go back to accepting as, the global universal consciousness that we had. Just like you see all the birds and everybody, they do their own thing and they come together when they're supposed to. It's the same way we had that. But there was a specific idea to break the world view of us as melanated people, as not a global people, as a people based upon specific zoning aspects. So that way the darkest Indian could feel he was better than the darkest African, and the darkest African could feel he was better than the darkest American, because all of them were vying for the title of white. So we're talking about from, 788, 789 to 927. I was 27, 26. That this specific empire influenced all of these people that they now revere as their academicians and literary lions of Western literature. There was another order called the Sufic Order of the Rose that had its European equivalent known as the Rosicrucians, that had its religious component referred to as the Lutheran Church. So, as we're saying, all of these people have this underground public agreement where things look like they're going one way and it's presented one way by the powers that be and the people that's the movers and shakers, the people that's making it happen. But then on the opposite side, there's this whole holding out of this one pact that all of these other pacts then became on. So then, based on this one pact, the farther away we move away from our original nationality. Did our forefathers know that that would be the recurrence or the occurrence of that? I don't know. All of them weren't astrologers. All of them weren't the best magicians. All of them weren't the best, statesmen, but a lot of them were. Yet, like I said, the difference between the Moor and the Mason was subtle in aspect. One was willing to go through a ritual initiation that was meant to symbolize the civilization of something that was not human. And one was not. One created the ritual for the non-human to go through. The difference between who's walking and who's riding. So in my opinion, you know what I mean, the dominion of what they refer to as the Barbary powers of the United States of Barbary had dominion or protection rights in conjunction with us over here. It's just that parts of us made deals with parts of Europa or European nations that had secret agreements with other European nations, even though that they were at war with them. And in those agreements, it was agreed upon that the only way for the Holy Roman Empire to extend its dominion from Rome, the original Rome or ancient Rome, to its position was to do so. So when we talk about Carthage, when we talk about the Garamans, when we talk about the Phoenicians, when we talk about the Numidians, talk about the Moroccans, when we talk about the Barbary, when we talk about the same people. If when we talk about Hannibal's trip across the Alps or Hannibal's trip into Rome, you know what I mean? Rome was another code word for those nations that were involved with that original experiment and used hostile takeover to bring other bloodlines into the national strata to further, I don't know, bleach it out, blend it in, whatever, or to create that new race, because once that race was, in a sense, cultivated, a caste system had to be created for that race, and which when we would move, and then they would then, just in that caste system, move into the tombs and stuff like that. When you look at the reenactments of these Aztec cities and stuff like that, you see people in the city, but you don't see people living in the city. You see people in huts and stuff around the temples and all that, but you don't see people in the, you know what I'm saying? The people you see in the temples are the high priests and the royalty. And you see them lit by torches, but when you go into these temples, you don't see any torch smoke. In the original rock, you see torch marks and stuff that came from explorers from later years. Even now, they try not to use torches in it. But also the deeper you go, the more the oxygen eats up the air. So, like I said, it becomes a circumstance of us understanding which and what representation we would take to do that. Like, envision what a government run by original or conscious people are. I'm not talking about in our present state. I'm talking about in our best state, in our best and worst state, because that's what it takes to have a nation. You got to have the best of the best and the worst of the worst, so that when if anything go down, everybody's going at it. And then whatever beef we had prior to the invasion, we work it out. That's how we used to do it. And that's how it was patterned by everybody after us. Every example that we had of someone that would fight back or did fight back was killed, you see? And so that desensitized the generation that produced them. So by the turn of that generation, by 79 into 80, they had already agreed subconsciously that they were going to do what they needed to do to survive themselves. because all the Panthers and everybody was all turncoat and all infiltrated. All the NOI was all infiltrated. Everything was infiltrated. And those malls became what they call boroughs, where they have a mall and he generationally or she generationally produces children that eventually go into the same thing that they was into and get to higher levels of it, and they report back to them, and then the parents report back to whoever hammer they are, and vice versa, all the way back to the grandpa. A lot of the propaganda that they was putting out on the Panthers with the comic books that had them talking about pig this, pig that, kill the pig, all that. Well, that was produced by the government. The niggas would read that and get hyped up and then go out and bang on each other. And once they saw that, they said, okay, well, what we got to do is write letters to each one of these saying that this one is doing this and this one is doing that. And they'll eventually take each other out. Then they do that. Then all we got to do is make sure we see if we can stick a woman on. Then if that works, then we can turn the women and flip that into a feminist movement by using Angela Davis and the rest of these chicks to help promote that. While the real chick Asada, she got to bounce when they wouldn't help or when she wouldn't join up with them. So we're talking about the extinction or the forced extinction of what they perceive as a black, what they want to perceive as a black Messiah. But they only know what that is based on what you give your attention to. They only perceive what's important in the world based upon what we perceive as important in the world. Only way white man today and a white girl today is rapping and doing all of that is because we put it out there. But hip-hop culture in some instances is so impotent that it does not do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to brag and boast about how dope it is and how it started everything and who started everything. Because you got white boys and white girls out here that's out rapping on these black kids and black, because they grow, because, again, they grew up under George Bush, so they whole family been niggerized. The entire white race is not what it was supposed to be for them, so they dropped the George on them to help niggerize all of them to the point that they would basically be perceived as black people. To then hopefully produce a whole new crop in the pseudo-mulatto class, or the pseudo-Hollywood affluent class that could then come over and rule over everybody else. In this pseudo-crazy, dystopian Hunger Games world where, for whatever reason right now, it's okay where they can make movies about killing children, and that's okay. In Poltergeist, you've never seen a little girl die, even though she did die in real life in the ritual, but I'm saying in the movie, you didn't see that. So what does it say? They're more open to produce more acts of mayhem because they have no restraint. There's nobody above them that's telling them what to do, because based upon, like I said, acts that were already integrated by acts like integration and all of that, the people, us, we reduced ourselves, well, not us, but our ancestors, our modern ancestors, reduced themselves by adopting the term Negro, black, and colored to identify themselves in the present context, to then create the cycle of redefining who they are every 25 years, which is why we're doing that right now. Because every 25 years we create, or any 25 years we create a new history for ourselves. Based on the 25,000 year cycle of creating a new history of ourselves after the last 25,000 years ended. This is why we were known as the perpetual people. Because we understood time in a way to cease its aging defects.
Okay.
You understand? By living in accordance with it. The more in balance you live your life, the more you strive to live your life in balance, the more balanced your life is. You understand? People like, yo, I've been trying to get it. I ain't got it. I'm going to get it. Okay, replace the term try with strive. Striving to get it. Striving to do it. Striving to get it done. Right? Then understand that the fact that you're striving that hard to get it done means that it eventually will get done. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of controlling fate like our ancestors did in the present context. We can only alter it based upon the decisions we make, you know what I'm saying? So the navigation of the 7 seas that we were doing while we were turning the wheel of Dharma, that they would call the ship's wheel, was basically us navigating the 7 chakras to get where we needed to go in the world, understand? While at the same time rebuilding and building the Temple of Solomon that manifests us as the original people. The original people not necessarily meaning us as the first people here in America, the first people on earth, but the original people meaning the people of creation, the first beings created with souls. Having a soul is the original nationality card of the planet. Because there was a time when people and souls didn't exist here. We're the first ones to inherit that ability to maintain that aspect of the Creator that other races prior to us and who didn't have it died out. So by the time we got to the point of creating a race in the image or in the negative context or negative image of us, at some point to do that, we had degraded mentally regardless of how high the culture was and sophisticated our enterprise was or idealistic our intent was in the process. Nothing was wrong. But it says that there was a time of great dissatisfaction. 30% satisfied, 70% satisfied, 30% dissatisfied. You know what I mean? So, it's always sleight of hand. Focus on Area 51 so you don't Google Area 52. You know what I mean? Look at Zeitgeist and Codex Alimentarius so you don't look at NDAA. You know what I mean? Things like that. So these superstorms and these again, always ritual killings and stuff, these are not everybody in the United States government. It's not everybody, but when you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. When you say yes to one instance of evil, you say yes to it all. Unfortunately, it is that black and white. You know what I mean? But living in America, you could always bullshit. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. Nobody is calling anybody by their real name here. Everybody is something else. But it has to be that in order for you to have a master know who you're dealing with. Based upon the treachery that was done, you got to realize people purposely came here to hurt other people, to turn people off from vouching and being cool with us. This is the same way today. You'll meet somebody and my name will come up and some people will be like, oh, word, he's dope. And some people be like, oh, fuck that nigga, he just see that. You know what I mean? And then when you ask why, I'd be like, oh, well, I heard from. You see what I'm saying? It ain't nothing that I've done or you've done. It's the fact that you do you to such a degree that other people feel that you doing you is somehow stopping them or turning people against them. That's how backwardsly externalized narcissism has become rampant in this community. You know what I'm saying? Yet at the same time that has become rampant, a positive thing that has become rampant is the blissful gift of analyzation. That analyzation where people are really paying attention now what people are saying. You know what I mean? That's awesome. You know what I'm saying? People are asking me questions, you know what I mean? sometimes about other people that I have to often disdain from answering based upon me, again, preserving my instance in all of this. Because all of this had to come to pass based upon it manifested. Yet, in the original interim, there were entities that were trying to turn people off from what we were saying about that. But now those same entities, like I said, have turned into, quiet singers where they, trying to acknowledge real events that's going on. So that's great. In our community as well as the outside, 85% community, as well as the diaspora period, A homie hollered at me and was like, yo, my man is out here from Singapore, and he asked me, told me to tell you what's up, like, you be listening to him. I was like, word? He's like, yeah. He was like, yo, Singapore, that shit isn't that big. I was like, wow, you never would think. It's very humbling, but at the same time, it's very real in the sense that there's a heavy melanated population in Singapore, man. And all of these places that you're seeing, they be bombing and all of that, they be always be black people. It's just that on TV, they always focus on the Arab-looking ones. See what I'm saying? That's why when T.E. Lawrence created the term Arab, it was a unilateral term to replace Berber, which was the pre-Arab, which, again, was the pre-Bedouin, right? Which, again, is the Beys, right? The Beys and the Deans merged together. And then from time immemorial, then it was based on the individual tribes that represented them, the Hausa, the Tuareg, you know what I'm saying, that were in now what we perceive as North Africa, which, when I was coming up, was called Morocco. You know what I mean? Same way when I was coming up, it was called the Persian Gulf. You know what I mean? But like I said before, the Gulf, G-U-L-F, in comparison to the G-U-F, the Gulf, which is the well of souls in the Bible, is another representation, symbolic representation of souls being trapped in a Gulf-like area. Because what Gulfs do is recycle the energy. That's why the BP thing was an attack on the American Gulf Stream. You understand? A planned attack with BP and psychotic members of the false flag constituency in the pseudo-American government. Like there's a big false flag like movement with them where they think it's okay to do shit like that, to get money. So whenever they get threatened, they threaten to do one of these things, you know what I mean, to pull more money out of these black budgets. But either way, these psychotic people have reduced the United States presidency to a gangstership. So in that, the original function of the United States government is still there. What it's supposed to do is still there. It's just that there's nobody to make it do that. You need, like, real muftis to come in there and really make that happen. The same way the United States will go into a country to take it over, right? And then after a certain amount of time say, okay, we're going to leave, but we'll leave like a couple of thousand troops here just in case y'all need something. And then maybe 100 years later they say, okay, we're going to take these troops. By the time troops leave, they done already had children, grandchildren, children. They are Iraqis now. You know what I mean? So what you going to bring them back to America to do what? The whole purpose of having a unilateral or multinational force is to be able to move loyal patriots from or noble patriots, right? Males and females from their home origin to another place, to a people who don't really know them, so they won't feel as bad as doing something to them. But while that's happening, while they're doing that to these people, there's people over here doing the same thing to their people. So by the time they get back, they already decommissioned, they cut off. They could bitch and complain or whatever, but if they do it too much, if they don't join up and not go back in, that's treason. They can get locked deep or killed. This is the mob. See what I'm saying? The original, what they call merchant marines or Moorish army, was not like that. And like I said, because we are not understanding the full axis of history yet, we're not taking into context why it's so hard to get together now. And we admit that that's what it is, that maybe we don't really know what that is yet. Maybe it's going to take another 25,000 years. Then great. Then say that. You understand? Admit that to yourself. And stop trying to add on to shit that you know you're not really qualified to really add on to. You're speculating and you're talking, but again, there's two sides to this thing, the speculative and the operative. The operative one is somebody that's out there doing it, regardless of what it is they doing. You could be making jewelry, and every time you put in another stone in the jewelry, you projecting or seeing a world in which we flourishing and being in a positive way. That's revolutionary too, man. That's just as revolutionary as dying for shit. As much as niggas want to die for shit, who's going to live for something? Who's going to actually stand up and live for the kids, live for the woman? Which woman's going to live for the man, live for the baby? Because these kids is ready. They know how to use the computer. They know how to hack the system. They know how to do everything. They know how to talk to animals. All types of shit is going on, man. I'm telling you, yo. It's really bugged out, man. It's a lot of wild stuff going on. And it's so subtle that people is missing the whole, the tapestry, you know? But when you really get down to it, it's really, again, about how you identify yourself before you figure out what national identity that's going to be. So if you are more from this nation or that nation, then fine, declare that. Nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have anything that connects you to, and this is just in my view, you know what I'm saying? Other people can have other mechanisms to do that. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm just saying in my view, there was something that was already laid out for us. That's already there. That ain't nobody really talking about they messing with, but acting like they're messing with. Like they'll use it to help set up a temple, but they won't use it to really build on the people about how they can use it to do something like that. Because once the physical consoles closed, we all became the consoles, whether they want to admit it or not. Like I said, if every black person in the country had a Moorish representation, this whole thing would flip, man. I mean, real Moorish representation. You know what I'm saying? Like real shit. Because pretty soon, you'd have white people doing it. And you know, once the white man do it, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. You have white men coming to Moorish facilities trying to figure out how they can learn how to be that. And a lot of them would be Asians, but some of them would be real earnest. And those are the ones who would have to wear the shrine affairs. You see what I'm saying? Everything got a place. So that way when you in court and you in a society and you see this nigga, he got a shrine affairs, and you see this nigga, he got a whatever, you already know what you're dealing with, man. It ain't concealed. It ain't some shit that it's just doing a bunch of dudes are just doing in a smelly room and shit, just talking. Like, this is real shit, man. This ain't that, man. This is all of that. Everybody's to blame and nobody's to blame. Everybody's a slave and nobody's a slave. Everybody's a master and nobody's a master. That's because the whole country's in limbo, because what you got is a scale that's only using one side of it. And there's two sides to it. But to implement the other side, we got to really understand why we have something like the key to our society. What original Mason, what real organic shit really is. Why, if it was white people that was found in everything, why would they allow a black man like Prince Hall to carry on their charter over here? What would they have to gain from that when allegedly everybody black was slaves? How is it that the first man to get shot in the Civil War, in the Revolutionary War, was black, and then the first man to get shot in the Civil War was black? How is that? What kind of coincidence is that? It's not a coincidence to me. This shit is real, man. There's a whole aspect of world history, which is our history. It's our history that these people have been purposely fudging to the world and putting different symbols and creating whole nations to. these original Bayesian nations and Caribbean nations and all of that, like they're nations within themselves. Yeah, there was a colonial thing going on there, but again, that was a Morisco thing. So even when you see white people in the pictures there and all of that, them white people were slaves too, man. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them think that the British East India Company let the niggas be over there just because they was white. No, they didn't. That's what they had to do when they was there. It's like this. You had the farmer, right? The farmer would be tilling the land, and then you see the priest. Then he asked the priest, "Where's God?" Right? The priest would tell him, "The sun is God." So now the farmer is not telling his family and everybody else that the sun is God. So that's what they believe. But the priest don't believe that. The priest believe that the essence of the sun is what God is. You dig what I'm saying? But the high priest don't believe that. That's what the high priest told him. But the high priest don't believe that. The high priest know that the spirit of the thing is it, but it is a representation of the divine essence of things that truly exist. But then that's what the Heru or the Pharaoh told him after his vision quest. But that's not what the Pharaoh know. The Pharaoh or the Heru knew that it was the Amsu Heru. It was the essence of everything is what God is. And that's why God is manifested in everything, because it's the only thing in everything that don't ask to be recognized in everything. You understand? Therefore, it can be physical and non-physical at the same time, be actualized at the same time in everybody's language, everybody's culture, everybody's imagery, but not be actualized in anything substantial, anything physical that somebody can hold and say, okay, that's not. So we got to create representations of that to replace the absence in it. You dig what I'm saying? The absence in us is what allowed us to create an absence, to pull the absence out of us that created this thing that we know as the absence. God don't tell you how much the water is. The white man tell you that. But y'all know when I say the white man, what I mean by that. But for those people that's first listening, I have to say it again. I'm talking about anybody that's working to fulfill the legacy of Western civilization from the inception of it to now. Because the inception of it was based on a theory and a lie. And was then couched with a little bit of Satanism and demonic possession that would be allowed to fester in the soul of humanity and bloom in our country, to remove the prospect of the original country. That's why Ben Bay laid out the pentagram and the compass and the square, to show the Moors and the Franciscan Moors, or the Masonic Moors, if you will. So once the real history of America and all that start coming out, to me, they ain't really going to start to accept it until you start to read the stories about them now becoming extinct. Because according to them, we got the highest blood pressure. We all going. We got the most people in jail. We got the most people dying of diabetes. We got the most people that's obese. We got the most people that's gay. We got the most people dying of AIDS. We got the most people that's miseducated. We got the most people that's not growing up with in a single parent home. We got the most people that's affected by crime. We got the most people that's affected by poverty. We got the most people. Look, you hear that? This is the shit that they are constantly telling black people, or people that they identify as minorities, who want to identify with that term minority, or who identify with it based upon them not knowing anything else. When you're not a minority in the country, you're a minority in the federalized system of pseudo-white supremacy, actualized now by physical Caucasian people. So you're not talking about something that's real. You're talking about something that's structured, or that was created for us to assimilate into through this thing called civil rights. Elijah Muhammad wasn't talking about Scientology or joining up with no Scientology church. Marcus Garvey wasn't talking about that. Marcus Garvey wasn't talking about becoming president of the United States. He He knew the difference. He knew what the United States was set up to do at the time. He was talking about getting people back to a certain mind state, man, a certain way of thinking. And Africa at the time was the doorway. But Sankofa said that you go to return to come back again. Revolve, revolution, meaning to get back to. What are we trying to get back to? A Moorish culture, an African culture, a Negro culture, a black culture, an African-American culture, an Indian culture. When you ask a white man what he's trying to get back to, he's trying to get back to more money, right? When you ask a white woman what she's trying to get back to, she's trying to get back to her nanny so she could pick up her kids, right? When you ask a black man, black woman what they trying to get back to, they trying to get back on time with their rent, back on time with their child support, back on time with seeing their girl, back on time with getting back into work on time. It's not no coincidence that every restaurant you go into, the majority of the help is blacks and Mexicans. That's not no coincidence. The majority, 85% of the civil service in the country, in the American government, is black, is original people, are original people. That ain't no coincidence, man. Yet we don't have no power in it. Where when the whole thing went down in Katrina, they was labeling us as refugees. They was labeling us as refugees and all of that. All of this comes back to this agreement in 1782, man. When our forefathers, some of our forefathers, ceased to end the hostilities of the war between the ancients and the moderns. A lot of high-level Masons don't even know that. They'll even deny that it's real because they descend from the people who come from that time who've been keeping it secret. All these white people talking about they could trace their families back 150 years, 250 years. Reese Witherspoon father, great-great ancestors on the damn Constitution. So you mean to tell me that these people just coming out of nowhere, back where Alabama just coming in, just blowing up? No, this is a cyclical cycle. This is a passed-down monarchy, and that's the system that they came into, and that's the system they function in to this day. 1782 in Wilhelmsbad. Wilhelmsbad. Like Wilhelm Reich, discoverer of the organ. Wilhelmsbad. Presided under by the Duke of Brunswick, another black man. All these people I'm talking about is black. Masons from Europa, Asia, and America. Where was the Moors from Africa? You see? This gives you a greater context as to why maybe some of the African situations is where they at, because a lot of them wasn't involved in these treaties. Because Africa, again, was going to be cut up eventually. It just turned out it was these white boys that wound up working their way into doing it. So we got to understand the fact that Yaku was an original man, and that any of us can fall victim to that. So in that, anybody wants to send any donations, you can send it to dukeoftears@gmail.com, through PayPal, or just go to superheruradio.com. There's a donation button there. You could definitely say what's up to us in that way. We greatly appreciate it because it helps in tabulating all of it. Also, check out www.darkskull418.com. That's www.darkskull418.com. Also, check out www.aseerthedukeoftears.com, as well as www.superheruradio.com, where you can donate to Super Heru Radio and some of the projects that we have coming up. Also, check out www.cookingmorewithless.com and www.blackmambaworkouts.com. Thank you guys for tuning in and holding it down with us. And inshallah, I hope we went over a lot of stuff you needed to know. And if you need to holler at me directly for class this Wednesday at 9 o'clock from 9 to 11, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. We have archive classes on sale. You can come check them out. Hopefully, we'll holler at me through House of L, man. House of L hotmail.com. Again, it's been Super Heru Radio. Thank you all for the donations you sent in the past and any donations you send in the future. And we will definitely get it together, y'all. You already have. At some point on the other side of this, we'll be looking back at ourselves, projecting us, moving closer to the goal. So once we get past the journey, you know what I mean, we can really get it in. So with that, love and light, follow that divine right. Peace.